very, very rapidly here. He goes over to Thessalonica, he leaves Timothy. Goes down to the next one. What town is that? Berea. Who does he leave down there? Silas. Okay, leaves Silas, then he himself goes on around to what town? Athens. Then what message does he send? All right, he said, go back up and tell them to get down here just as rapidly as you can. Did they do it? Yeah, they came down to him. As soon as they got down to him, what did he tell them? Go back up. And then I will go over to what city? All right, I'll go over to Corinth then, and you go on back, and you see what they are, and then you're to do what? Come down to Corinth and meet me down at Corinth then when I'm there. And so then in Acts 18:5, they came down, and what kind of report did they give? A great report. And that is where Paul then sat down and wrote the first Thessalonian letter. Then he sent it back up then to them there. Now, as we've learned in chapters 1 through 3, it's very briefly, is that there's three things that he talks about. This is very personal. He's bragging on them. He's exhorting them. He's building them up. He's telling them about the power of the gospel, about the purity of the messenger, that's himself, and then about the good effect on the hearers. In other words, what it did for them. Now, if you really think about that, that is a good way to approach what he wants to do. Here are Jew or Gentile. Gentile people. They've been converted out of idolatry. They are suffering very, very greatly, and because they have obeyed a gospel, and it's a new gospel that they've never heard, and so he's writing them to instill within them that you did not make a mistake. Even though it's causing you a lot of trouble and so forth, just look at the power of the gospel. Now, the gospel came with power, and in what way? What was it that just absolutely boggled the mind of people, honest people, that when they heard the gospel, what was it that boggled their mind then? The miracles that accompanied it. When they told the story of Jesus, then they performed those miracles. Why, just so much power, you know it had to be from God. Then the next thing is that when a charlatan comes through and is preaching untruths, what can you always bank on? Why is he doing it? Doing it for his own gain. And so he said, now you know the purity that we had no impure motives towards you, we no money or any such thing. And then the last thing is, when you hear this gospel, the effect it had on you. Just look at the change it's made in your life. Instead of following the oracles or the words that they say came off of the mountain up there, why, look what the gospel has done to you people. So that's what that's all about. Then you get down in here, and you find the word and the honest hearers came together, and this is in chapter 2, verses 13 and 16. Now then he's going to start dealing with this and bragging on them there. That can all be summarized for us pretty rapidly in this particular chart that we had last week, and that is up there the Greek gods, down there the priest. The priests say we have talked to the gods, and then with guile and flattery and glory and uncleanness, covetousness, harshness, they gave them the word of the gods, which in reality was the word of man. But Paul said, over here, when I came to you, I took the actual word of God and I gave it to you, and you see the difference between the two. So that's what he was dealing with then in that passage. Now, this last week we ended up at the end of chapter 3, so we start out with chapters 4 and 5. Now, in this, we come to general exhortations. Now, this is something that Paul did in all of his epistles, all of his letters. He would start out with a salutation, and then he would follow with a prayer, and then he would preach his sermon, his doctrine. It would be doctrinal, whatever it is he's going to deal with. And then he would close with practical exhortations then, with saying, now then, since you see this, now do this, do this, do this, do this. And so it would be very practical exhortations. All right, there we find in chapter 4, he deals with those four things. In chapter 5, he deals with the other. Now tonight, we're going to be dealing in chapter 4. So the first thing that he's going to deal with is fornication. Now, stop to think for just a moment that if I left Monroe, let's suppose, I had to leave here, and tomorrow I got run out of town like Paul did, and so I'm leaving before I wanted to leave, and so I've got a lot of things that I wanted to teach you about. So I go somewhere else, and I write you a letter. And the big thing I'm writing about, I want to exhort you about, do you suppose it would be fornication? See, to the church here? No. If I wrote it, I said, now let's talk about fornication. I want you to realize what this does. And I want you people to abstain from it. You'd probably say, what does he know that we don't know? See? In this age, there's fornication all over the world, but in the church, among Christians, there's still fornication, but is it outward and openly, and do we know about it? In other words, you see it everywhere, and 24 people here in the congregation, you say, no. But back in those days, it was a very, very important subject. Why was that? That was the main crutch in their religion, in that man-made doctrine that of these methodical gods there. The act of fornication was built into the religion, and they would teach the women that they should devote their bodies to the temple, and it was a religious act. It was something that nobody thought any more about than you think about having a cup of coffee today. If you meet somebody, Oliver sees Nancy out there at the Wendell's Bakery, Denise. Forget Nancy. You see Denise out there. So I said, well, sit down, Denise, have a cup of coffee with me. Well, do you think that's going to be the talk of the town? In other words, do you know they were out there drinking coffee? You see? Renee comes in and said, you can't believe what Oliver did. He drank a cup of coffee with Denise. See? Well, we would think, she's crazy. Well, that's the way fornication was looked at. So it was a normal thing. It was an enjoyable thing. So when they were converted to Christ, this is something now that how much of it do you have to give up? All of it. See, you have to give up all of it. And knowing people, and they've always been this way, it affects all of us this way, when you are converted to a new thing, whatever it is, how hard is it to give up the old thing? If somebody showed you tomorrow that being I don't want to say a vegetarian, but let's suppose that eating wheat germ and snake skins are the most healthful food there is. And they prove it to you. If you'll eat wheat germ and snake skins, there's a whole nation over here, they live to be 200 years old. I don't care what it is. Big reward, 500 years old. And you're convinced you ought to eat wheat germ and snake skins. So you say, okay, I'm going to do it. Now, what's your big problem? You made up your mind, you're dedicated to it, but what's your big problem? What am I going to find out if I come and visit you in a month from now? You're probably nibbling on a cookie, right? See, it's over here. Why do we do that? Why don't we just give it up? No more cookies, no more bread, no more ice cream, wheat oil and snake skins. See? Well, don't you know it's better for you? Yeah, you can live 500 years if you do that. But how hard is it to give it up? Well, we've all been through those things as far as food and various things are concerned, and so it is in religion. Most of us do not understand the extent that these Thessalonians had in giving up their religion. Now, we gave up things and we changed religions. But if you were converted out of the Methodist Church or the Baptist Church or Catholic Church or you name it in there, still the basis of it was Christ, wasn't it? In other words, there are just certain things that you find that you need to give up. But what would happen to somebody that finds out everything they believe they have to give up? They have to give up their God. They take on a new God, the God that they've never seen. And they've always worshiped gods that they've seen. They couldn't imagine worshiping a God that you can't see. And yet, now then, they're going to throw away all these gods that you can't see and believe in a God that you can see and believe in a God that you can't see. And so they're kind of standing there like that. Okay, now then, give up the most enjoyable, favorite part of your religion, fornication. And don't cheat anybody anymore, and don't lie. And then, you know, there's another thing that's kind of odd to us when we get at it. And start loving each other. And we're going to talk about that tonight. That's going to be the next thing we're going to talk about. But that's strange. That's strange, just like giving up fornication. Why? And then start loving each other. That's weird. But we'll get to that. Now, fornication is the first thing. So try to put yourself back in their shoes. This is not something that you just take lightly like we would take it here. And if I said Sunday morning I'm going to preach on fornication, well, you wouldn't be saying, oh boy, I'm really looking forward to that. I want to find out what is wrong with it, you see. It's something that you've known all of your life. Okay, now, he starts out and he said, finally, brethren, we beseech and exhort you. That means we beg you and plead with you is the idea. We beg and plead, build you up in the Lord Jesus, that as you received of us how you ought to walk and to please God, even so do you walk. Now, we want you to walk the way you received of us, the way you should walk. Now, what does walk mean? It means live. It means live. And this is a word that is used throughout the Bible. You probably heard me tell the story. I was taking Hebrew from a guy from Israel. He was over here going to the university. And so it was he could speak English, but you had to really listen to him. Hebrew was his language. And so in one of the lessons that I was reading, I said, okay, Mr. Eames, read the lesson. So I read it, and so it told about Shimon going up here to Tel Aviv, and he caught a train. He was going to go up, but he missed his train there. And so I said, now, you understand what you're reading? Yeah, sure. He said, what does that mean? Well, Shimon missed his train. Yeah, but what does that mean? Well, it means Shimon missed his train. Yeah, I know. What does that mean? What does it say? Well, I read it again. Shimon, right? Yeah. Missed, yeah. Train, yeah. What does it say? Well, Shimon missed his train. No. What does it say, Miss Williams? I was just about to solve this problem by punching him in the nose. And he said, okay, what it means is that it's like, no train. So it's, there's no train. I said, well, there's still a train. No train. So what do you say? What do you say here? You got, sir, what do you say here? You say, like, I take a test. And you say, how'd you do on your test? And I say, oh, boy, I missed the, what is it you miss? I missed the boat? Yeah. So if you say, oh, took that test, but boy, did I miss the boat. That's what missing a train. It's like that. There's no boat, there's no train. Oh. So he said, you got to take this. So that's the way that they would say it over there. And so you have to learn these colloquial things from other people. Well, one thing is walk. And in the Bible, everybody's walking. Well, you think they're walking. Well, if it says he walked from Jerusalem to Jericho, that's walking. But if he walked in Jericho, that's not walking. That's living, you see. That's where he lived. Now, the reason for that is how much did they walk? When you lived in Jericho, how did you get around? What did you do? Anytime that you went anywhere, it was on a camel or walking, you see. And so this is what he's saying. Now, here's the way I want you to live. I want you to live in this way. I want you to follow as you received of me, the way I told you, and that you abound more and more. You keep getting better and better and better at this. For you know what charge we gave you, that's a commandment, we gave you through the Lord Jesus. For this is the will of God. Now I'm going to tell you what God's will is. This great God in heaven, the one I preached, the one that you accepted because you saw all the miracles that He did through my hands. Now this is the will of God, even your sanctification. Now, as we get to talking about this, what does sanctification mean? So there's our first word. We're going to pick out some words here. What does sanctification mean? Yeah, it means holy. Now, what does holy mean? We're back to this. Set apart. That you are a set apart people. You're a people that have been set apart for God's use. So if somebody said, have you been sanctified? Yeah. I've been set apart for a spatial use of God, you see. And God, He set us apart from the rest of the world. We're not like the rest of the world. So, sanctification, that you abstain from fornication. Now again, to us, well, everybody knew that to start with. Even all the people who are committing fornication tonight knows they should abstain from fornication. Okay? But not so back there. So you abstain from it. Totally get away from it. Have nothing to do with it, is what it means. Now then, it says that each one of you know how to possess himself of his own vessel in sanctification and honor. All right, so now then, here we have possess himself of his own vessel. Now here's what you have to learn to do. You have to learn to possess yourself of your own vessel. What would that vessel obviously be? Your body. That you learn how to control your body. You don't just do what your body wants, but now you learn how to possess yourself, take control of it, so that you are the boss of your body, and your body is not the boss of you. Now, we could talk about this for I don't know how long. We could go to the Roman letter, and there in the Roman letter, Paul talks about that that which I do not want to do. That which I do not want to do, that I do. And then he's all stuffed. He says, therefore, when I do this, it is no longer I that do it, but it's the sin that dwelleth in me. Now what he's saying is, Paul is saying, if I could live the life that I want to live, see, my spirit, it would be totally perfect. How perfect would you be if you could live the way you want to live? Would you be like Christ? That would be it, wouldn't it? You'd just say, we'll use Christ as a standard. I'd be just exactly like Christ. That's what I want to be. Well, why do you ever falter? Why do you ever get angry and say something you shouldn't say? Or that you have an evil thought? Or that you lie? Or you cheat? Or you commit fornication? Or you... And then go, why do you do that? Is it because that's your goal? That's what you want to do? You got up today and said, you know, I think I'll go lie a couple of times. Right? No. It's your flesh. It's your body. All of a sudden you get yourself in a situation where you see you're in trouble, and a lie will get you out of trouble, and you don't want that body to have to suffer, so you lie. Right? Then you say, oh, why did I do that? So you're back up here to your spirit again. So Paul said, this is what I want you to do. I want you to learn how to control that body. Take control of your body. That's there. Now, he said, I want you to do it in sanctification and honor. Sanctification means set apart for God, and honor means to be held in high esteem. That you're to do it so that you will be glorified. You'll be glorified, and that's really the idea of honor here. And you'll do it in such a way that you really esteem, is another word, your body. Now, don't do it in passion of lust. All right, so now there's what we got to get at. There is the reason why you commit fornication. Passion of lust. Somebody said, yeah, I did that, but I don't know why I did it. Well, the rest of us do. It's passion of lust. Now we have to define these words. Guess why we're going to define these words? somewhere down the line, so you can read it, you know the definitions, but just think, next week I get to give you a test. So, what does passion mean? Passion of lust. As soon as you find that, I'm going to ask you what lust means. But first of all, what is passion? When you see that word. In Acts 1, it talks about Jesus was here 40 days after his passion. And we say, well, that's when he died on the cross. What does passion mean? What? All right, it means the feelings that you have. That's what it means, the feelings. Now, it can be either good or bad, either one of them. Something happens to you, and you get bad news, and you are just devastated. You start crying and sobbing and emotionally upset. We'd say you're passionate, wouldn't we? We generally today save that passionate for the good, but we'd say, well, they're very passionate about that. And so in an evil sense, in a bad sense, it's your feelings. In a good sense, somebody comes in and tells you just inherited $1 million. Well, wow, see, you're passionate about it. Your ball team is winning the ball game, and you're out there and you're yelling, go, go, go. Well, you're passionate about it. It's the feelings that you have, those emotional, strong feelings that you have. Now, the emotional feelings that you have that's built on lust. What is lust? The word lust means strong desire. That's all it means, a strong desire. Not just a weak desire, but a strong desire. Now, I might ask you here this question. When you hear the word lust, do you think of something good or bad? You think of something bad, don't you? But in reality, is lust good or bad? It's neither. Lust was put in you by God. Let's suppose you didn't have any strong desires. Suppose I could take every strong desire you have away from you. Now stop to think, what kind of person would it be? Well, you'd make a good hippie, wouldn't you? Isn't that about what they were made of? They have no desires. Don't you want to get a job like your dad? No. Don't you want to make money? No. Don't you want to have a house? No. You want to take a bath? No. I found what I want. I want to sit here with my dog and wait on somebody to come by and pick me up. So it has no desires. There's nothing that you can do with an individual that does this. Paul, talking about qualification of elders in 1 Timothy 3, he said, if a man desireth the office of a bishop, an elder, he desireth, now there's that word, lust, after a good work. So, now if that was translated lust, we would look at it and people say, what is there, see? But if you have a strong desire to be an elder, you have a strong desire for a good work. Now, Paul himself said he was a very lustful individual. And do you know what he was talking about when he said it? And he said, I lust constantly. He lived a constant life of lust. If there's ever a man, there's lust in his heart every minute of the day. You know what it was? Okay, in the Philippian letter, I lust to go be with Christ. I have a strong desire to go be with Christ. See? Now, if we take your lust away, you wouldn't have any desire to be with Christ. You wouldn't have a desire to go to heaven. You wouldn't have any desire to be saved. Wouldn't have any desire for any good things to happen to you. What kind of a person would you be? See? So God built lust within us. But now, what do we do with lust? What do human beings do with it? We've got this good part of our mind, so we're capable of lusting. So what do? We use it in a bad sense. So when somebody says lust, if we talk about a man is a very lustful man, what comes to your mind? Sex. Because it's used so much in that realm. See? Out of 1,000 times the word lust is used, I expect 1,000 times it would be used in that way. You'd probably have to use it 1,000,000 times before it'd ever be used in another way, you see. And so lust is a good thing, but man misuses it, and especially in the sexual realm. And so it's that strong desire. It's that feeling, that passionate feeling. And so you get yourself worked up with an emotion and a passion and a desire to have her. And that's what causes fornication then. So he said, get rid of that. See, that's the point I want you to get rid of. And then he says in here, as the passion of lust, even as the Gentiles who know not God, they don't know him, so they don't even try to control their body, that no man transgress and wrong his brother in the manner. Now, when you commit fornication, you transgress. That word means that you overstep your bounds. You overstep your bounds and you wrong your brother. It's not just something you do, but every time fornication happens, you wrong your brother. Now stop to think about it. If I go out and commit fornication, does it have any effect on my spouse? Have I wronged my spouse? Have I overstepped my bounds? You see? Well, yeah. Well, what about the other partner, the woman that I committed fornication with? Have I overstepped my bounds with her? Have I wronged her? Yeah. Yeah, I wronged her. Well, what about my children? Have I wronged them? What'll happen when my children hear what happened? They have any effect on them? Yeah. Just devastate them, devastate a home. Children to be. Suppose we have a child with this woman. She becomes with child. Have I wronged that child? Have I brought that child into the world? And here's a dad that has no right to the mom. And boy, I'm getting mixed up, right? So I've wronged that child. What about others in the family, the extended family? My brothers, sisters, aunts, uncles, grandma, mother. Yeah, I've wronged them. What about friends? Have any effect on them? So I go out and I commit fornication. And then will it have any effect on you? Yeah, have a lot of effect. Will it be good or bad? Always bad. What about the community? Fornication have any effect on the community? How much taxes do you have to pay because of fornication? So you say, well, in a country where they don't have welfare. Well, is there a country that doesn't have welfare? In every country, these children have to be cared for some way or another. And you say, well, I know a place they don't. They just throw them out under a bridge, and the kids raise themselves. How would you like to live in a town where all these kids running around, and they have no mom and dad, they have no way of taking care of themselves except stealing? Does it have an effect on the community? You see? And so here it is. God's law is a good law. He gave us these laws always for our good. He tells us that. And you wrong your brother whenever you do such a thing as this. Well, the next thing is then, God is an avenger of these things. Well, what does that word mean? God is an avenger. What does avenger do? He takes vengeance. Now, we saw, especially I saw Bill O'Reilly, talking to some people, and they was talking about God may have had something to do with the disaster in New York and all that. Boy, my God is not a God of vengeance. I'll never believe in a God of vengeance. Well, is God a God of vengeance? Romans 12, God says, don't you take vengeance. Well, why did he say that? He went ahead and explained. He said, for vengeance is mine, saith the Lord. I'll take vengeance. Now, bad word, right? Bad word. What does it mean? Righteousness. That's what it means. I will see that things are made right. That's what it means. Righteousness. Do you believe in a righteous God? Yeah. You believe in a God who acts and whatever He does is righteous, and when a punishment is needed, what does a righteous God do? He gives that punishment. Just like a righteous father will give punishment when the child needs the punishment. And so that word, avenger, means one who practices righteousness, sees that right things are done. Now, when you commit fornication, God says, I will see that the right thing is done. In other words, you're doing wrong, and I'll see that you pay for the wrong. That's what He's saying. So that's there. And then He said in here that avenger and all these things, we also forewarned you and testified, for God called us not for uncleanliness, but in sanctification. Now there's that word uncleanliness. Uncleanliness in the New Testament has to be defined by the way it's used in the Old Testament. In fact, that's true of any word. If I bring up any word, doesn't make any difference what it is, how do you know what that word means? By the way the people use the word, isn't it? See, we use the word. A mouse used to be a four-legged animal running around. And everybody hated to have a mouse around. But now, if the word is used today, you see, how many of you played with your mouse today? Well, yeah, I couldn't live without my mouse, you know, and the computer part that's there. So you have to define it in the way that it's used. Now, here we have uncleanliness. Back in the Old Testament, God called His people, and He said, now you are a physical nation, a physical nation. Now He's going to deal with them spiritually, but you're a physical nation. Now I want you to separate yourself physically from all these other nations, and I want you to keep yourself physically pure. And what I mean by that is, if you are out walking in a field and you happen to step on a dead rabbit, you have to come in and go through a cleansing ceremony. You become unclean. If you're in a building and somebody dies and there's a corpse there, you have to go cleanse yourself because you become unclean. And He gave many, 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 many laws like this, and they didn't have anything to do with sin. Nothing to do with sin. It was a physical nation. The thing that it had to do with was that which is nauseating, is about the only word that I know to use. Anything of a nauseating nature, you became unclean. I want you to be a perfect physical specimen with nothing touching you of a nauseating nature. That's physically. Now then, we move over into the spiritual kingdom. That's where you and I are. Now then, don't do anything of uncleanness. Now then, spiritually. Now we're in the realm of sin now. Spiritually. Don't do anything of a nature that is not pure and righteous and holy. It's unclean. You go out and commit fornication. People try to hide that. It's unclean. It's a nauseating thing. It's a wrong thing. And so uncleanliness has to do with those filthy things. Let's put it like this. Those things that today we would use the word filth. Where you talk about a filthy man. Well, he may get up, take a bath every morning, wear a suit all day. But you say, well, if you get to know him, he's just a filthy man. What do you mean, filthy man? He has these vulgar thoughts, talks vulgarly, does vulgar things, you see. And so God didn't call you for that. He wants you to be totally pure in a righteous way. Therefore, he that rejecteth not man, but God who giveth the Holy Spirit. So now, if you reject my teaching, you're not rejecting man, but who are you rejecting? God. Why does he keep coming back to this? He doesn't do this in the Roman letter and any other letters. He'll make a statement about the Word of God. But here, why does he keep coming back that word that I'm preaching, remember, it's the Word of God, not man. You see how important it is to know about those idols and so forth, and how these people, the culture that they lived in, and he's building them up and encouraging them, you see, in this way. Okay, so there's the first one in there. So it's God, not man. Now then, the next thing is love to all and meddling. They're kind of related, that's in here. But now, he starts out in verse 9, and concerning love of the brethren. That's the first thing he talks about. You have no need that one write unto you, for ye yourselves are taught of God to love one another. For indeed you do it toward all the brethren that are in Macedonia. But we exhort you, brethren, that you abound more and more. You learn how to love more and more. These people were loving. Their love extended out of all throughout their country of Macedonia. But you keep doing it more and more. Now, love. You say, why was that such a big deal? What did love mean in the Roman world to a Roman god or a Greek that worshiped the Greek gods? What did love mean? They had love. They had different words for love. They had Venus, who was the goddess of love. So here's this goddess that lived up there. And she's the goddess of love. Isn't that beautiful? Now, what does that mean? Sex. That's what it meant, sex. What's the definition of love? Love is an attitude that causes you, finish it up, always act in the best interest of the other person. Tell that to a Roman. Now, Romans, here it is, this is a guy we're here, and he's always acting in the best interest of his neighbor. What would that Roman say? Stupid. Yeah. You know, somebody gets in my way, I kill him or I do whatever's necessary. That's what a real man does. A real man doesn't love. A real man is going to run over other people and take what he really wants. That's what a real man is. So they didn't have the teachings of love that you find in the Bible. It's a new thing. In fact, Christ says, this is a new commandment that I'm giving you, that you love one another. It's something strange. It's something the world hasn't been involved in. God taught his people in the Old Testament to love each other, but who are we talking about here? Are we talking about Jews or Gentiles? See, Gentiles. And so, if you go out in the business world today, hardcore business world, and you get in there, how many of them operate on the basis of love? What is it that you do? You enter into what we call the rat race. That sounds like love, isn't it? So we enter into the old rat race, and so that means we've got to fight in traffic to get there. What's the best way to fight traffic? Boy, if somebody gets in front of me, give him a bump in the bumper, right? Or yell at him, or do something. You don't take advantage of me. Somebody try to crowd in, you're not going to crowd in front of me. I'll do that. I'll get on up there. You see, that's there. We're in a rat race. We get there, we got a business deal going. What are we supposed to do? Win. Get that at all cost. Lie? Oh, surely, especially. Do you ever have a business deal that you didn't have to lie about? It's unknown in the rat race, you see. And so, out there in that world that's out there, people go at it in that way. Well, that's the way the Romans were and the Greeks were. Love was a sissified word. Now, Paul said, that's what I want you to do. I want you to always act in the best interest of your brethren. I want you to love them in there. So it was an unusual word for them. And then he goes ahead and he says, and that you study to be quiet. Helen, listen to this. And you study to be quiet, and to work with your hands. Now, what does that mean, study to be quiet? So I tell my wife to listen to that. We laugh. Why would we laugh? What do we mean? If I look down and tell Helen, be quiet. Don't talk, right? Shut up. Don't talk. Is that what he's telling them? I want you Thessalonians now to learn, don't talk. No. They could talk. You got to talk to conduct your business, do what he tells you to go ahead and do in there. But notice what he says in here. He uses it in contrast to this. He says, now, I want you to study to be quiet and to work with your hands even as we charged you. Well, no, I skipped over. Study to be quiet and do your own business. There it is. Quiet is the opposite of doing your own business. Not being quiet is. See? This is meddling, is what it's all about here that we're talking about in here. To be quiet means quit jumping around and becoming involved in everybody's business. Just settle down. Settle down and do your own business and take care of your own business. So that's what be quiet means. Quit hopping around, sticking your nose in everybody's business. Peter said in 1 Peter 4:15, he said, let none of you suffer as a murderer or a meddler in other men's matters. But if any man suffer as a Christian, let him not be ashamed, but let him glorify God in this name. So, to suffer as a Christian is fine. Somebody persecutes you because you're a Christian, fine. That will happen. Don't be ashamed of it. But if somebody happens because you're persecuted because you're meddling in other men's matters. Suppose I go out to Oliver's out there and I get to look at him and say, Oliver, that's not the way I think you should do this business. I think, you should sell this here and you should do this. And so next day I'm out there, Oliver, and I keep going out there and I'm trying to get Oliver to do his business the way it should be done. What will I probably end up with? Yeah, Lowell, out of here. I don't want to talk to you anymore. Well, why are you acting so ugly, Oliver? You get out of here. Just get out of here. Well, now I'm suffering. He doesn't like me. He may call me an ugly name. But why? Because I'm a meddler. Now, don't you meddle in other men's matters, just like don't you become a murderer. And if you become a murderer, kill somebody, you're going to suffer. And you stick your nose in other people's business, you're going to suffer. And there's no glory in that. But if you suffer as a Christian, then don't be ashamed of that. So, meddlers. Now, the Greeks were known to be this kind of people. Just jumping around and being real meddlers. Todd?
It's talking like in people's day-to-day affairs, not their problem.
No, it could be either one. It's sticking your nose in my business where you don't have any right to stick it in.
Okay, but if somebody's welcome you to help.
Sure. Sure. If I come to you, Todd, I've got a problem, could you help me? Sure. Could you come up to my place and look this over, with your engineering mind? So you come up there, Lowell, you shouldn't do this, you ought to do this, and blah, blah, blah. You're not meddling in my manners, you see. And but you come up there and you see, I put in sidewalk this summer. You stop by and you say, that's a stupid looking sidewalk. Why didn't you do it this way? The way you should put in a sidewalk is, and then you start in like this. So why don't you tear it out, Lowell? The best thing to do is just tear it out and start over again. Now you're meddling in my manners. You see that you're doing that. Even though your idea would be better than mine. You have no business doing that to me. Now if I ask you to come up, I laid this sidewalk and boy, I'm having trouble with it. Could you come up? So you come up and you tell me what's wrong. I said, the only way to fix it is tear it up and do this. You're not a meddler. Yeah. So what we would use today, the terminology we would use is sticking your nose in other people's business, see, is what we'd use. So don't you do that. But you work with your own hands, even as we charged you. Now, work with your own hands, get busy. Ephesians 4:28 says, let him that stole steal no more. That's good. How am I going to make a living? I used to do it by stealing. But let him work with his hands. Get out and get busy yourself that you may have to give to the needy. And so we have that responsibility of each one of us taking care of ourself that is in here. Verse 12, he tells why. That you may walk becomingly toward them that are without and may have need of nothing. So that's a reason. You can walk becomingly to them that are without. I've got a couple of verses there that I want us to take a look at. In the Philippian letter in chapter 2 and verse 14, let me read you what he said. He said, do all things without murmuring and questioning, that's arguing and debating, that ye may become blameless and harmless, children of God, without blemish, in the midst of a crooked and perverse generation, among whom you are seen as lights in the world. Now you live in a crooked, perverse, immoral group of people. Everybody does. That's the world that we live in. So now then, you live in such a way that you are a light in the world here. He says, among whom ye are seen as lights in the world, holding forth the word of life, and so forth. So you take care of your own business. You live in such a way that other people will see you're a special person. You're not constantly causing these troubles like a lot of people do. In 1 Peter chapter 2, there we find that Paul has this to say. Again, Peter does. And so it's about the same thing down in verse 11. Beloved, I beseech you, as sojourners and pilgrims, to abstain from fleshly lust, which war against the soul. He's talking about the same subject, you see. Having your behavior seemly among the Gentiles, that wherein they speak against you as evildoers, they may by your good works, which they behold, glorify God in the day of visitation. So you're going to be living among these people. Live in such a way that they will see the kind of person you are. Even though they talk evil about you, they can't talk evil about what you actually do. And they'll see your good works, and then they'll glorify God. Why are you the kind of person you are? Why did you quit doing all those things that you were doing? You're probably just a hypocrite. You're probably just trying to take advantage of us. You're probably blah, 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 blah. What is it that the world can't fight? I know why you did it. You're a hypocrite. I know this, I know that, blah, blah. But if you're righteous, they can't fight that, can they? And so they look, and finally they've got to say, there's a change made. There's a change made in Oliver. Oh boy, you should have known Oliver before he became a Christian. There's a change. See? Well, why? Why was that change made? Because of God. See? And God will get the glory. So he's trying to tell them, this is the kind of life now that we want you to live in here in contrast to the other life. Okay, there's where we close.